host, Y Option, as he examines college football through the West Coast lens. Yogi Roth now on Rockin' Minooch with Jimmy B right here on ESPN 620.
Hey, how are you? Great to hear your voice. I think it will. My gut is that the trend is going to grow towards more of an NFL style, like what Steve Sarkisian referenced on the Kay Adams show, kind of like OTAs. I've talked to some coaches and athletic departments about that, of making spring a little bit longer. Right now there's a 34-day window to get 15 practices in, which, some places that fit beautifully. Like I remember as a player, that was awesome. It was aggressive 5 weeks or whatever. Some try to mix it up and go pre-spring break, post-spring break, just from a health standpoint, and making sure guys don't go off and party for a week or whatever it might be. But I think now we'll see kind of like those 3-day weekends, and can you split them out so you can, especially for the quarter schools, appease the guys that are there. Like call it like at Oregon, it's a quarter school. You go in and maybe you do your first mini camp, if you want to call it that, and then that might just be for the new faces that showed up in January. And then you have an OTA for the whole team that's mandatory, right? And then maybe once you get into that next quarter academically, you bring the newcomers together. Like I think we'll see a lot of that moving forward. I mean, think about it right now. You've got these, they call them PRPs, which are player run practices, and they are basically practices, right? Like you're getting a script from your coordinator, you're running certain plays. Like I think we might as well just call it what it is. Like it's a version of OTAs anyway. So I think we'll see that. I think we'll see, increased elimination of a quote unquote culmination of spring. But I think the programs that especially aren't like the bluest of bloods, I don't think you want to lose a connection to fans coming out. Even if it's 8,000 or 28,000, I think there's something that I would, if I was one of those, call it programs 20 through 60 in major college football, let alone 20 through 100. You want to create something where your fans are meeting the players and getting to know the faces, take the helmets off, like do something for them. I think the TV helps. As a TV guy, like I think maybe you create more of a showcase like we've done in the past with the Pac-12 when I was there, versus only games, which are now the only things that you're really seeing on television. So I think it'll still evolve, but that's probably how it'll net out. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, live reps were, like we never saw them in spring showcases or spring games anyway from a quarterback, like unless it was the younger guy. They were like, all right, we want to see what he could do. The dual threat guy, let's see what he could do as a young player. But the starter was always protected. I wonder if it becomes like, you can remember times when I think Herm Edwards had this rule where like there was no tackling, like in spring ball, even in fall, like they weren't taking guys to the ground. Like that's the NFL world. You're not even wearing pads in OTAs. I still believe it's a developmental sport at this age. I still think you do need to bang a little bit. I think that it's important to know what you have. And it's also important to navigate the calendar. So right now, like the portal's got a 10-day window. I think it's April 15th for, a little less than 2 weeks. I think we'll see teams try to navigate around that window for their team and their players, which I think is a smart thing to do. Live reps, it's a great question. It's why I think, we're looking at high school football, and I know you train a ton of guys in high school. I think the development in high school has never been better. I think the development in college has probably never been worse, because guys either have to play early or they're not going to play. So then you're just running what you can run to be efficient and hopefully successful. Or there's decided that, they want to dip out, or you're getting a guy who's experienced, but he's only, he has 1 or 2 years left. So you've got to get them up to speed, which is why I think we're seeing in college football relationships become a premium, right? Kenny Dillingham was the poster in college football this year of making sure he got to know his team and a bunch of new faces, and he's so easy to connect with. That isn't the case everywhere, and it's hard when you still have these hours that are still being monitored by administrators within your respective school. It's like, all right, well, we can't necessarily just hang and get to know one another. We need to like go to work and make sure you can align and line up and understand the system. So it'll be really fascinating to watch how this thing continues to shake out. Then you add in the roster element, and my gut tells me that I think teams are going to have smaller rosters than we anticipate and build it more like an NFL team to try to thrive in the revenue sharing model that we're about to enter.
About 3 minutes.
I don't know. I mean, obviously a lot of data has been run as well, right? Like, so would it net out being that way anyway? Like, do we see let's just call it a traditional season, Ohio State, Michigan, call it now Oregon and Penn State not being in the playoff? Like, it's hard to imagine that, right? Same thing with like Georgia and Alabama and, pick two others. So I think like history would probably prove that 3 or 4 of those teams from those leagues should be in. The thing that history hasn't proved, and I think that's the frustrating part, because I felt like my Pac-12 hat on, right? I call games to the Big Ten. So, I've lived that world for a year. And I also remember being in the Pac-12, and now that's kind of the Big 12, where you're just getting kind of, at times nudged to the side, or you could feel slighted in a way and not respected in a way. And, hey, let's go play the games. Like, I get all that, like totally, wholeheartedly. And I think that league in the Big 12 is still so new and so fresh that it's hard to say, like,
About a minute and a half.
I can't imagine a playoff without X. Like, it's hard to be like, yeah, I can't imagine a playoff without Arizona State, Utah, Colorado, and BYU. Like, that never happened, right? So it's hard to stomach that. So I think it's why, like, we see this narrative going out and maybe the potential of that reality moving forward with the 2 leagues that are clearly driving the conversation. But I hope at the end of the day, like, it's just the best teams. I hope this drives equity in scheduling. I hope that we don't hear coaches talk about, well, I don't want to have a tough non-conference slate. Let's just get to the playoff. Like, I want to just go see good football. That's why I kind of like the committee. Even though we'd all disagree with them at times, at the end of the day, like, the inequities in conference games, to me, would just kind of got brushed to the side a lot. Like, when I would watch an SEC team play Mercer in Week 11 and any other team play a challenging game in Week 11 that is a 9-game conference slate, like the Big 12 and like the Big 10, I'm like, what are we talking about? So I hope those things get addressed before anything else. Like, I'd love to see equity in major college football on the schedule, and then kind of we'll see how it shakes out. But it's an interesting time, and I'm just trying to have empathy to everybody involved, because I've sat in both sides, whether where I sit now calling games in the best conference in the country in the Big Ten, or having been in the Pac-12 where you felt slighted at times, and you just want to say, no, Utah can go hang with anybody, and you just try to me at least, kind of stay calm, state the facts, and see how this thing shakes out.
Good to wrap after.
Oh, he's amazing. I still can see him at the Elite 11 with that great hair that he's still sporting now, and I've always felt like he had a discernment to him and a presence to him that was unique. Was bummed to see him leave Oregon after leading them to a Pac-12 championship game appearance and a title in 2020. You looked and, watched as he went to Texas Tech and then finished at Louisville. I mean, just went on a journey that none of us, especially him, could have ever predicted coming out of high school and going to the 11. I'm sure you've had many of those conversations with him, but I think he's proved the one thing that's true outside of got to be a competitor, got to be able to be a spot passer and hit certain areas. And you can do those things, but really you have to prove you can navigate adversity. And he's had to do that on so many levels and so many different areas. He's going to be Andy Dalton to me. Like, there's going to be a world where we look up and it's 12, 14 years later and he's made over $100 million playing. Maybe he's a starter for a run, maybe he's a backup for a run, but I just think the adversity he's navigated, he's going to have this presence, kind of like Dylan Gabriel. Like, I think both of those guys are similar. Like, they're going to go and just be tremendous additions to a franchise wherever they net out, and they'll end up winning games for somebody. Like, they will. They might not be picked, as the first rounders, but I think both of those two will have a future that I think will be pretty bright in the NFL. You too, man. Always love talking to you.